Are we less safe?
No, we're not less safe. Our guard is up. In fact, I'd say that when it came to Afghanistan, obviously, this Obama administration has put more resources into the fight against terrorism than had previously been the case. On balance, we remain as safe as we can possibly be in a world in which there are Islamist extremists who want to attack us.
Joe Lieberman on Andrea Mitchell reports yesterday, and here with us now, NBC News Chief Foreign Affairs Correspondent and host of MSNBC's 1 p.m. juggernaut, Andrea Mitchell reports. She is Andrea Mitchell. Also with us, MSNBC anchor, political analyst Carlos Watson. He's also the founder and publisher of a new website, The Stimulist,
there it is,
with
right
a T,
there.
thestimulist.com.
Are you the stimulus?
You know, I want to stimulate conversation, new people, new ideas, new debates.
I like it.
My goodness,
Speaking
this is a family
of
show,
speaking of
Carlos.
stimulating conversation, Andrea, we just had one here on our air between Liz Cheney and Eugene Robinson. I'd love to hear what you have to say about this, given your extensive contacts. What do you think Dick Cheney is referring to? What is he seeing that some other people maybe are not seeing when he says that the Obama administration has made us less safe?
I think he believes what he's saying. I agree with Liz to the point that her father is not motivated here, I don't think, by politics. He is passionate on this subject for as long as I have known him. And certainly he did change after 9/11 in that the threat level, changed and that they were at the center of a storm, and that did change their central focus. Now, Eugene points out correctly that there are many legal opinions that contradict what the Cheney-Bush teams did, and that in fact this is being investigated, and there are serious questions being raised about those lawyers who are in the Justice Department and in the White House. I'm just not questioning the motives and the mindset of what was going on and what is going on now. I think a lot of people are questioning exactly whether it was the right thing to do, whether it was the legal thing to do. And you saw what Joe Lieberman said. Joe Lieberman, hardly a left-wing liberal, and the chairman of the Homeland Security Committee, says that we are not less safe. In fact, people from Colin Powell to Condoleezza Rice, even though she hasn't been outspoken, to the current Secretary of State, all these diplomats and a lot of foreign service officers under them and a lot of ambassadors say that we were less safe because of the torture techniques, because of the, quote, enhanced interrogation techniques, that critically changed our posture in the Arab and Muslim world.
And Andrea, implied in the vice president's criticism of President Obama is that he knows things. We don't know what these things are that have scared him so much that he feels compelled to go on television and tell the country about this because he fears for something perhaps imminent. What does he know? What does he know that doesn't have Barack Obama out telling us that we should be on high alert?
Well, I think it is the interpretation of intelligence, because clearly Barack Obama sees the presidential daily brief. He sees everything that the CIA has, that the National Intelligence Director has. And Liz, by the way, is correct that Dennis Blair's first internal memo was very different from what they released publicly, even though they will disagree about that publicly. The people at the intelligence agency defending what Blair said and saying that they were consistent. If you read the words, they were not consistent. They were very different after it, quote, got cleaned up for public relations reasons. But, the bottom line here is that Barack Obama knows everything there is to know. It's just that Dick Cheney, I think, honestly believes that the people now in charge are misguided and are misinterpreting the intelligence, and believes that these techniques worked, and that and disagrees with the notion, which Eugene was trying to explain, that even if you say that they worked, the Obama White House would say they're not worth it because of the downside of what you lose. And in fact, there's a lot of data that they didn't work, that Abu Zubaydah, as Gene was pointing out, had in fact given all of his useful information before he was waterboarded.
See, I would think, Andrea, that there would be out there in the world of public opinion probably a split there in terms of if it worked. They might say,
and Joe is
come
right.
on. Come on then, if it worked and we had this we only had one person and we had this one person and we could get this information, I'm telling you, probably a good portion of America, if not most of America, would go with it. And that's where I think the White House is having it both ways.
I think that's true. But what this White House would say is, even if that's the case, we wouldn't do it. They're saying that they made a legal and a moral choice, that American values trump what might be gained from Khalid Sheikh Mohammed, let's say, or Abu Zubaydah in one of those, the bomb is about to go off, and what would you do anything that it takes? Most Americans would agree with you. Most Americans would agree with the way Joe described the debate. But this White House, and I believe Eric Holder, and the people who are now making the policy disagree with that.
Andrea, you know, the thing that I thought that Liz Cheney said that she said somewhat quietly, but maybe I thought was incredibly insightful, was the perspective on September 12th, September 13th, and Mike, as you pointed out, that they didn't have as many leads as they would like. And it strikes me that there's a different conversation they could have, which is that we admit that we may have done more things than were necessary, and we may have done some things that were wrong and got some things screwed up, but we were operating in an environment in which we were unsure and frankly weren't as together as we could publicly admit at the time. And I think that would lead to a different conversation among the American people if they were to say that, as opposed to simply saying that it worked and it kept us safe and this was the only way to go and that we tried it on our own soldiers and therefore it's okay.
You know, I do think that the context was completely different. Look, you were pulled out of your office, swept off your feet. The president is in Florida and then flying around the country because they're not sure where they can safely land him. You're in charge. You are faced with the potential decision of shooting down a passenger plane if you think it is being used as a bomb against the Capitol of the United States or the White House. So you don't even know what the enemy is, although they figured out within 30 minutes, as we reported at the time, that it was probably Osama bin Laden and al-Qaeda. They didn't know where they were and how many other sleeper units there might be and how many others might be on, in the United States itself. That said, they're not apologizing right now, Carlos, for the enhanced interrogation techniques. They're defending them. And so that's where the debate. They're not saying that those were the mistakes. They're saying there might have been mistakes by Paul Bremer on the ground in Iraq after the successful taking of Baghdad. Those are the mistakes they're acknowledging. I don't think in their very spirited defense, and Liz was eloquent today in her defense of what they did, and the vice president's been very strong with Bob Schieffer on Sunday on Face the Nation. They're not backing down on that. They believe very strongly, and I give them the credit. Frankly, Dick Cheney is being consistent. He is passionate about what he believes. He's not backing down, and he's not trimming his sails.
But that's interesting because Roger Clemens was consistent and didn't back down either, and that didn't turn out to work out as well in a different context. What I wonder is if the more insistent and the less open they are in this conversation, if it's inevitably going to lead to a place that Barack Obama so far said he didn't want to go, which is a 9/11 type commission. We know that the Senate Judiciary Subcommittee has hearings coming up with Sheldon Whitehouse at the head of those. I just think they're putting themselves in a tougher place.
No. Well, I think the real hearings are being held by Dianne Feinstein. Aside from the public hearings, that's an investigation that's been going on into what the intelligence practices are. And I'd like to see if they can release a declassified report on that.
What do you have on today, Andrea?